Line me up some rails, bitches, because we're celebrating. That's right, I took down the Super Bowl versus Seagouch. We're going to review this game very briefly, and then we're going to talk about the real-life NFL playoff matchups. Probably do a vid for each round, or at least the first two. So, the key of this game was the fact that Tom Brady just doesn't have anyone to throw to, so I decided to pick up Ryan Fitzmagic, who's playing the Bungles, and Miami has sort of thrown caution to the wind. They have stopped tanking, and, you know, they're not good, but they play in a very balls-out sort of way. In the beginning of the season, it sort of looked like they were losing on purpose when it came to trading away all their talented players and fucking starting Josh Rosen. Look, if you want to tank, you start Rosen all year. So I know I gave a lot of grief to Miami early on in the season, and frankly, they did deserve it, but they really picked it up. The coach really had a desire to win near the end of the season, and they ran really aggressive, balls-out plays, so you got to give Miami credit for trying. And Fitz had a great day. It was the correct decision to start him, although I could have started Brady, and it wouldn't have mattered because Brady was solid. Brady's never really going to shit the bed for you. He has a pretty high floor, but a pretty low ceiling, too, with no receiver help. How cool would it be if in the playoff game the Pats are going to play that we're going to talk about soon, you see a tall figure coming out of the tunnel. You can't really make out who it is, but this guy's a monster. You think you see an 8 somewhere on his jersey, and then you see the knee brace on his elbow, and you know Gronk is back, baby. How great would that be? Honestly, the Pats would probably win the Super Bowl again if that happened. A lot of people are speculating this could be Brady's last year. This was definitely one of the years where Brady had the least amount of help. I mean, he has Edelman to throw to. Edelman's not a legitimate number one receiver. He's more of a slot type guy, like a Wes Welker. And obviously Brady has pretty much taken whoever has been given to him and succeeded in his career, and he's turned mid-tier guys into exceptional receivers. But a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's a lot of weapons to worry about, and this year with the Pats, this might be the least amount of weapons they've ever had, even going all the way back to like 2001 when they were a defense team. This Pats team is very similar to a 2001-2002 type Patriots team that is more reliant on the run and the defense than Tom Brady airing it out like their 07 squad with Randy Moss. So to complete my thoughts on this game, Seagouch had a great start with Ryan Tannehill, and Devote Freeman popped off, but everyone else shit the bed. Zeke was absolutely wretched for the first time ever against Philly. The Cowboys choked on chode this week, and that would ultimately lead to another disappointing 8-8 season where they missed the playoffs. Jason Garrett has had a lot of those. About half of his seasons that he's coached for the Cowboys have been like that. DJ Moore got hurt. Tyreek Hill failed to pop off. Chris Carson got hurt mid-game too, but at least he put up 6. He straight up broke his hip. Someone like nailed him, like a safety came up and tackled him right in the hip, and it freaking broke it. That's crazy. But the crux of this game was my receiver backbone that I wasted. And when I say wasted, I mean used my first 3 picks on. Jones, Thomas, and Kettle all popping off for over 13. So that was my Super Bowl victory versus Seagouch. First Super Bowl ever. Handy victory. Solid second place from Seagouch, who was very dismayed to learn that there is no second place payout. The division winners get payout and the winner gets payout. I learned this in 2016 when I lost to Mark in the Super Bowl. Alrighty, let's talk about some real games. So, the Bills and Texans are going to be facing off against each other in the first round. The Bills, of course, are the wild card winning team because the Pats win that division every year no matter what. The Texans are an incredibly inconsistent squad that looks awful some weeks and excellent other weeks. They pretty much always choke in the playoffs. They're having a little bit of receiver injury troubles. At least Hopkins is healthy. The Bills are a sort of ground and pound team with a below average offense. Josh Allen is developing sort of slow. He's not all that accurate. Singletary is very good, which was a guy I was on from the very beginning of the year. But overall, This is going to come down to Deshaun Watson's performance and if he can prevent from turning the ball over. The Bills, of course, were famous for going to all those Super Bowls in the 90s and losing them all. And ever since then, they've been sort of irrelevant. They limped into the playoffs 2 years ago and were slaughtered. Overall, I expect this game to be another disappointing game for the Texans in the playoffs. This is a team that, even though they're in a laughably soft division that was completely gift-wrapped to them when Andrew Luck basically rage quit his career, I really just don't trust the Texans at all. They've lost so many soft games this year, and they are just so inconsistent. I'm going to edge Bills here, 21-17 Buffalo. The other AFC matchup is going to be the Titans and the Pats. Now this is interesting because pretty much everyone expected the Pats to get a first-round bye as usual, but they choked against Miami in the final game. Shockingly not in Miami, which is where they always lose. But that meant that they lost their first-round bye to the Chiefs, which is huge for the Chiefs, which are a team that can't really get out of their own way in the playoffs, similar to the Texans. Not having to play a trap game will be really helpful to the Chiefs. The Titans are an above-average team. They're similar to the Vikings in the sense that they're a ground-and-pound team that relies on defense. Everyone had just chalked Ryan Tannehill's career up to being dead. This was a completely unfair assessment. He blew his knee out. He had some other injury troubles, but he was on the Dolphins with no weapons. And he goes to the Titans, which, again, I mean, A.J. Brown's your best weapon, and he leads into the playoffs. There are a few things worth noting with the Titans. These are the two biggest storylines for the Titans this year. Marcus Mariota is a fraud and a failure as an NFL quarterback. Just cut him. The guy doesn't have any talent. Get rid of him, okay? You know, you go 8-8 every year with him, and you limp into the playoffs and call it a success. The only reason the Titans have a winning record is because Tannehill took over and succeeded. However, playing in Foxborough, I don't think that they're going to be able to win. The Titans just do not have the weapons on offense, similar to the Patriots, but Patriots have a much better defense. If the Pats do lose, expect Derrick Henry to show out and have an absolutely amazing week. Like 200 yards he would have to probably get to beat the Pats. A lot of people are speculating that this is the year where the Pats lose before the AFC title game. This is the year where Brady calls it quits. And, you know, people have been saying this every year for the past 5 years because everyone wants to be the first one to in before. Oh, Tom Brady. I was the guy that called it when Tom Brady fell off. You got Max Kellerman doing it every year and acting like it's a novel take. Overall, the Pats just aren't what they used to be, though. I know they won 12 games, but a lot of that has to do with coaching and Belichick gritting it out and figuring out ways to win. Another reason is they get to play, the Jets in Miami, who were pretty bad, and the Bills, who aren't great. Of course, they did have a good year this year, but they're still the Bills. But the Pats won 12 games overall. I would expect the Pats to take a victory here, 24-14. Vikings and Saints. This is a rematch of that famous game, the miracle in Minneapolis, where Case Keenum threw that bomb, and that Saints safety looked like he was playing Madden and switched to the wrong guy and dove on accident and just completely missed and choked the Saints out of the playoff contention. But this is similar to Brady. This is one of those teams where you look at the aging star quarterback and say, I don't know how many years this guy has left. The Saints have had some bad luck in the playoffs recently. Obviously, they got screwed because of a call. Then the NFL, due to all of the fucking whining, instituted the rule where you can review pass interference. And what that essentially equated to was a big middle finger right in the face of Saints fans, because that was pure placation. Everyone who's watched football knows that anytime those penalties get challenged, the refs might as well not even look at them. They just say that, oh no, we were right the first time. So it's all a big sham. This idea that, oh, we're going to review pass interference, that was just to shut Saints fans up. They might actually get rid of it. It doesn't ever work. It slows the game way down. And even when stuff seems really blatant, it doesn't ever get called. So the Vikings went 10-6 here. They're a ground and pound, defense-based team that really likes to run play action, screen passes, and run plays. Dalvin Cook, who was, of course, exceptional in fantasy football this year, managed to stay healthy until the end of the season, but he's going to play in this game. And the Vikings are going to look to control the clock, limit turnovers, and keep the Saints offense off the field. Now, the Saints offense, of course, is fierce. They have Latavius Murray and Chimera, one of the best quarterbacks ever in Drew Brees. And then, of course, Michael Thomas, probably the best receiver in the NFL. Very consistent. They're playing in the Superdome, which is probably the biggest home field advantage in football, I would say. It just gets so loud. Those are my favorite games to watch on television as far as stadium goes, because the sound really reverberates even on the broadcast. You can tell it's popping in that dome. Remember, a lot of those people down in New Orleans, they don't have a lot of other stuff as far as sports to root for. Like, yeah, the Pelicans are there, but they sort of suck. And of course, basketball is not nearly as much of a big deal as football in the South. People really love the Saints down there. I expect them to win this game. The Vikings will probably put up a decent fight, and they'll look solid, but this is just yet another instance of Kirk Cousins having to carry his team, and probably he's not going to be able to do it. Overall, I think the Saints offense is going to be too much for the Vikings. They're going to have a really hard time shutting the Saints down. It's a solid season for the Vikings. They had some nice wins, but overall, this game should be the Saints to take. I really expect the offense here of the Saints to perform up to its standards at home. Give me the Saints 35 over the Vikings 21. Final and least interesting round is the Seahawks versus the Eagles, two injury-plagued teams that limped into the playoffs. Philly, of course, has basically no receivers, and Selleck is hurt, right? Brent Selleck? Yeah, their tight end is hurt. No, it's Zach Ertz, excuse me. I knew that was wrong. Zach Ertz is hurt. It's a little old school there with Brent Selleck. But Zach Ertz is injured, and basically Alshon Jeffrey, Nelson Aguilar, all these guys have struggled severely with injury issues. And it's sort of perplexing to me on some level, as big as football is in America and as many talented players there are that don't get to make the NFL and are just right there on the cusp, how there isn't a receiver who can come in and fill the void and do a good job. It's just, something doesn't seem right about that. If there's not enough depth in America to, okay, I know this guy isn't like top 200, maybe he's like 210. It's just weird to me, I don't know. But Philly couldn't get out of their way all season. Thankfully, Dallas was just as bad. And this game will be in Philly because the 49ers won the division and the Seahawks are the wild card winner. I expect Russell Wilson to carry the Hawks to victory here. Looking at this game objectively, the Eagles are just too beat up and they are too inept to win this game. I mean, if you think about how bad the Cowboys were, the Eagles were almost just as bad. Once the Eagles lose, expect everyone to cry for Nick Foles. It's very funny, between Nick Foles and Carson Wentz. In my opinion, they're about the same. They're both above average. They're both better than Dak Prescott, by the way. But yeah, it's very funny because anytime Wentz loses, you hear all this crying about how they wanted Foles. And then, when Wentz wins, you never hear anyone, oh, what a good decision to let Foles go. Anyway, the key of this game is the fact that both of the Seahawks running backs were hurt, Rashad Penny and Chris Carson. But they re-signed Beast Mode, which is sort of funny because Beast Mode is sort of this eccentric guy who people love to watch, and he's a between the tackles sort of runner, but he he's retired twice already, and he just takes a year-long hiatus, seemingly, like he doesn't care. It's just bizarre, Beast Mode, but he didn't look very good in the last week that he played, and that was a big reason why the Seahawks lost. But anyway, I give this one to the Seahawks, probably 27-10. I just don't think Philly's going to do anything. Alright, so I will preview next week's matchups next week because I'm not going to shadow box because this would be retarded if I'm wrong and someone could get hurt. Sub for more.